So I'm really stoked about how the boards came out, folks. And yeah, you can see my other boards behind me up here. Some experiments that didn't work and some that did. But I'm really stoked with these boards. I'll explain why. All right, so I'm actually a designer. I really don't care how pretty the boards are. If you look at these rails, you can see that there's still a lot of abrasion to them, and I want this because I don't design my boards for speed. I design them for control, and it's about control when you have a kite that's pulling about 300 horsepower and will launch you into anything in front of you, because the way I fly my kite is I keep it in the power zone. Most people are afraid of the power zone, so they don't fly their kites in the power zone. They fly them out of the power zone, and then when they jump in the air, they dip the kite in the power zone for a minute to sustain their jumps, but otherwise they don't utilize what's really there. All the boards came out really light and they fit the rocker jig perfectly. And now I know that they're gonna hold. So this is an epoxy hot coat, and I'm not even going to bother doing any sanding or polishing. You can see there's these little pieces of glass sticking up. I'm just going to use a file, a body shop file, to knock those down, and then I'm going to ride this sucker. Like I say, I'm all about control. The more the board gives me control over the kite, the more radical I can get with it. Okay, so this is the board where I didn't get all the plastic off the bottom. I took off what I could, and then I went ahead and put a hot coat on it anyway. And I'm going to ride it just like this because it doesn't matter that much. It's all about the design. And here is the auto body file, so you get an idea what that's unreal. About. All the ingredients are there. All three boards I made fit perfectly in the rocker jig, and you know, all that glitters is not gold, folks. A Twitch, let me flip the Twitch streamer just gave the former president a big ass Tesla and a gold Rolex, and I was just thinking, what value is a gold Rolex? It tells time just as good as your cheap Timex or your iWatch. Your iWatch gives you all your internal functions, blood pressure, all that good shit, and can tell you how well you slept and so forth. Anyway, my point is, all that glitters is not gold, and people are like magpies. If it's shiny, they'll buy it. You know, it's really ridiculous. So you see all these boards in the shop. Most people don't have an idea how they work, but if they're shiny and pretty, they'll buy it. And then they get on the water and they'll never reach an ability level that they thought they might reach, because the board's just a pretty board. And so I build my boards not for speed and not for you know, all these other kite boards are built for speed and then jumping. You might as well put a piece of plywood on your feet. I build my boards specifically to give you control, so you can really go nuts with the kite. And I fly my kite through the power zone, and that allows me to lay down some serious carves and get some serious acceleration across the water, which to me is the rush, because to me it feels like I just dropped in at double overhead sunset, something I did in my youth and I was totally addicted to. Anyway, so I still need to put the end caps on the board, and I have some old growth California redwood that I ripped out of a building at one time and saved, and I'm going to make the end caps out of this redwood. And now you can really see the outlines of the board. See, the two on the left are my stance specific boards for my left foot forward stance, and the one on the right here is a right foot forward stance. So you can see how these are like a pair of shoes, one for the left foot and one for the right foot. And that's what's so unique about my design and my patent, is that these boards are designed to give you control. So you can really go nuts with the kite and fly it in ways that other kiteboarders won't even try. So it's all about power kiting. Most board builders don't have a clue about the difference between what hydrophilic and hydrophobic is. If you look at this rail here with all the abrasions, you know, where the weave of the glass is showing through, you have what's called a hydrophilic surface, more or less. It could become hydrophobic, but it's hydrophilic, meaning water loving. And then you look at the bottom here where there's a gloss, you've got clearly a hydrophobic surface. So what happens is, as the board rides across the water, and I explain this in my patent actually, I have a harder edge here at the middle of the board so that the water sheets off and creates a separation point. And then towards the ends, I have a softer rail, a 50-50 rail. And that's what patents are. They're a license to sue an infringer, but in return for that license, you share your knowledge. And I'm sharing my knowledge right here on the YouTube video. And you can see how that is a 50-50 rail here coming off the end. Because with a kite board, you want control. So when you have it raked over in the water against the kite, you want it to act just like a nose rider, a longboard. You want it to be in the water, not on top of the water. And that gives you the control to fly the kite into the power zone and then blast across the water with the acceleration that the kite will provide when you do that maneuver that I have called a power loop. And I've even trademarked the name. And now these are Power Loop brand boards that I'm making and designing. And if I go into having them made in a factory, they'll be all pretty and polished, you know, because you got to accept that people are basically magpies. And that comes back to the gold watch. The gold watch point. I've got this iWatch, and this thing is really helpful to tell me what's going on inside. And I would much rather be wearing this than a gold Rolex, because, folks, what's most important to you is your personal health. And the older you get, the more you realize that. Of course, a gold Rolex will get you more trophy wives, you know, more gold diggers if you're a guy. And then, you know, but then you're just an insect engaged in competitive propagation. Everything trying to breed ahead of everything else. And where's the point in that? You know, we can do so much more as human beings. Scraps of old growth redwood. Look at the beautiful grain in this lumber. This is the kind of lumber that when you try to pound a nail into it, you'll bend your nail if you're not good at putting nails through wood. All right, here I'm showing you how to clean up the redwood, and you just need to grind off the side that's going against the board. Don't even bother with the other side, because you will grind it all into shape. And then you want to fit it, and you want to kind of grind your board to put a little concave in there so you create a pocket for the putty that you're going to make. It's all about the setup, folks. So I've got the tape ready to go at each end of the boards. And my little blocks here. Only need to clean them on one side because I will be shaping them to fit once I have them all glued up. You can see I've got 3 boards ready to end cap. All right, time to mix up the paste. Okay, mixing up the putty. Make sure that you weigh your bucket before you add the resin. And I mixed up way too much resin here. But anyway, that's the hardener. It's 2-to-1, so 3 parts total. And this is stuff called Cabasil. And if you live in the jungle and you can't get Cabasil, I would suggest that you use flour. I've heard of guys using that. It works just fine, as long as you don't use too much of it. This stuff is really lightweight, and you want to mix up a nice putty that's pretty thick. Once it's thick enough, then you just put it on there. The end caps are in place. I spilled a drop there, but that's why I have a rag handy to wipe it up. There you can see this end cap. And if you come back to the next video, I will show you guys the technique of shaping a block of wood on the end of the board. It takes a certain technique so you don't rip it off, and you can even adjust it afterwards. You can tighten up the tape, you can add extra tape if you need to. It's all good and really fun. All right, folks, I got those end caps going, and to those who know me, nobody really knows me, but I am a waterman, they call it. I see myself more as a mariner because I've sailed across the Pacific more times than I've counted, both on Matson container ships, on sailboats, various sailboats, my boat twice, and I've also became a lawyer because I needed to prove to myself that I was smart enough and good enough. And anyway, one of the reasons I became a lawyer was to be able to be my own patent attorney. And so I've been spending the last 5 years learning that art. And it really is an art. And so what a patent does is it gives you a license by the government to sue people that infringe on your patent, and in return you have to teach something unique that's never been taught before, and that's these boards that I'm making. So anyway, I'll give you guys more philosophy later, but my philosophy is that life is about attention, and what you pay attention to is what matters. Everything else is pretty much not that significant. Of course, you have to survive, and survival is important, but don't get caught up with greed, because that will end up making you miserable. And like I was talking about the watch issue earlier, who needs a Rolex? I mean, you're a fool if you seek to aspire a Rolex. You're just like a magpie that loves to pick up shiny objects. It's better to focus on yourself and to focus on what you can do for humanity.